Hi, and welcome to Crafts with Ash. My name's Ashley, and today I'm going to bring you 4 really cute and rustic spring DIYs using mostly items from Dollar General. Now, even though I'm using these unique items from Dollar General, I am sprinkling in some items from the Dollar Tree. So each of these DIYs are totally inexpensive and so easy to make. If you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that little notification bell so you can be notified anytime I upload new content. I wouldn't want you to miss a thing. Also, give this video a thumbs up because that really helps my channel to grow. Then hop on over to Facebook and Instagram and look for me there and give me a like and a follow. I post a lot of behind the scenes content that you would love to see. All right, let's get right into it. For this first DIY, I'm using this Welcome Summer sign that I got from the Dollar Tree. Now this sign is new this year, so if you see them, pick a bunch of them up because these are perfect to make big signs with. But for today, we're just going to use one of these. The first thing I did was take off this 3D foam welcome, and it was pretty easy to get off. I just started with my scraper and then it peeled right off. Next, I took off the twine hanger and the tag. Then I took my sanding block and sanded the back of the board down. That way it was nice and smooth for me to paint. Make sure to wipe it down when you're done sanding. The next thing I did was take my Waverly chalk paint in white and a chipping brush, and I went ahead and messily, I don't think that's a word, but I gave this a very messy paint job. So as you can see, I wasn't really going for full coverage here because I wanted to give this sign a chipped wood look. After my paint was dry, I took my Waverly Antique Wax and my favorite distressing brush from the Dollar Tree, and I dipped it in the lid, I dabbed it off on a plate, and then I dry brushed over my board with the wax. Now, again, I was not going for full coverage. I was just brushing, paying attention to the edges and the corners, and then also hitting the middle. Then I took the white chipping brush again and kind of brushed over the brown to tone it down. I kept going back and forth between the wax and the white chalk paint to create the look that I wanted. Next, I took this board that was the same length of the board that I'm working on, and I'm going to create the shiplap look. So I put the board down, and then I took a small paintbrush, dipped it into the Waverly Antique Wax, and then I just painted lines going down again to create the shiplap look. Then to blend everything in, I took my sanding block and I sanded it all down. After wiping it off, I took that little paintbrush again and I painted nail holes at the tops of every slat. So I put 2 nail holes in between every slat. And I did this on both ends of my board. Ahead and put my board off to the side to dry, and now I'm pulling these amazing chicken wire signs that I got from Dollar General for $1 each, and I'm going ahead and cutting off the wire hanger carefully, and then I'm going to take off the cowls in the middle of these signs. Now, I didn't have my needle nose pliers with me or like a little screwdriver to get in there, so I just used my scraper to kind of get the staples up, and then I used my wire cutters to pull them out. Now, you want to carefully do this so you don't accidentally rip off the chicken wire, but once I got underneath there and got the staples up, they were really easy to come out. Once those cowls came off, look at this amazing frame that you have left. I went ahead and did this on both. Next, I took 2 of these plastic jars that I got from the Dollar Tree for Valentine's Day. Now, I did see some for Easter too, so they should still have these. And I opened them out of the package, and then I peeled the label off. I did this for both. Next, I took some twine and I wrapped it around the top of my jar. Then I wrapped it through the middle of my chicken wire and tied it to the back. I did this for both as well. I did go ahead and double knot it to make sure that it stayed, and then I just put some hot glue at the bottom wherever it was going to touch that chicken wire just to give it some extra support. Now when you do this, you do want to be careful because as you're about to see on this second one, I pulled it so tight through the chicken wire to tie it that the chicken wire actually came off. Now I did fix it, but I just wanted to let you know to kind of cautiously tie it. So there's where it came off. All I did was hot glue it back on there and it was fine. I haven't had a problem. But just be careful when you are tying the twine through the chicken wire. Before you tie that second one through there, you're going to want to put it next to the first one to make sure that both of your jars line up. After that, I cut off the remaining twine that was on the back, and then I went ahead and took my hot glue and kind of put some on the back to give it some more extra support. I did this on both as well. After my glue was dried, I took that whiteboard again and I lined both of these up on top. Now, I did have it more towards the bottom, so I left a little space on top. Once I positioned them where I like them, I went ahead and hot glued them down. Next, I took my twine and starting from the back, I hot glued it down and then I wrapped it around and around and around up top until I had the look I was going for. I finished it off by putting some hot glue on the back and then cutting off the remaining twine. Next, I took 2 of these sprays of greenery, and these came from the Dollar Tree, and they are my absolute favorite. They look a little frosted, and I think that's why I love it. And they had purples, pinks, yellows, so I grabbed a ton because, like I said, they're my favorite. And I just went ahead and cut some little pieces off and then just arranged a little floral arrangement in each one of my jars. I tried to use all the pieces from both bushes to make it more full. So this next part, I'm going to give you a few options that you can do. So technically this is optional, but here's some ideas. What I did next was take these black chalkboard little signs that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I took off the clothespin on the back. Then I went ahead and hot glued it to the front of each of those jars. Now before I did that, I decided that it needed a bow. So I just took my twine again and I cut a very simple bow and then hot glued it to the twine that was already on my jar. I did this for both. So back to my little chalkboards. I took my white paint marker and I wrote welcome on one of the signs and spring on the other. Now, the reason why I say this is optional is because if you don't do this, then you can actually use these jars to switch out the florals per season. So you can put some sunflowers in there for fall, and then maybe some pumpkin picks. You can throw some winter sprigs in there, some Christmas things, and then you can also change it up by using picks, like I said. So you could do hearts on a stick, you could do shamrocks on a stick, you could do eggs on a stick, something like that. So that's why I said that this next part is optional, but it's totally up to you. I absolutely loved how this came out. I think that I might end up taking those chalkboard tags off. That way I can switch it up. But what would you do? What do you think? For this next DIY, I grabbed 4 of these teacher boards from the Dollar General, and they were for Valentine's Day, and they were each $1. The first thing I did was use my scraper to unscrew the little hooks on the back, and I'm laughing because I did not have a screwdriver with me again, so I just used my scraper. It took a really long time, so just get a screwdriver. It'll save you so much work. Then, by using my hairdryer, I took off the stickers on the back. Now, I thought those little holes were going to be a problem, but they kind of disappeared after I sanded them down. So I went ahead and sanded down each of the boards because it still had a little residue from the sticker. Now watch what happens. Boom! I accidentally sanded the red and then went right on top of the white, and then that brought the sticker out in red. Oops. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to paint them anyways. After I sanded them down, I went ahead and wiped them off to make sure that there was no sand residue on there. Next, I took my Waverly chalk paint in white and I painted 2 of my boards with that. Now, ideally, I would have loved to get all white boards, but this is all they had, so I had to just use what they had. So I painted the 2 red ones in white, and then I'm going to create my own mixture to paint the other ones. But no matter what colors you get, if you do this project, you're just going to want 2 white and then 2 pale pink that you'll see in a second. I ended up doing 3 coats on each board. I made sure to paint every part of that board except for the very bottom. So I did the sides and the top. Next, I took my pink parfait paint from Apple Barrel, and I mixed in a little bit of the Waverly chalk paint in white. Now, I had to create my own mixture because I didn't want it a bright pink, I wanted a pale pink. So if you have a pale pink color, then this would work. Or use whatever color you want. You can do a pale green, a pale blue, a pale yellow, whatever you love. And then I gave each of the whiteboards 3 coats of this little mixture. And again, I did the tops and all the sides. While I had my paint out, I took this package of little square blocks that I got from the Dollar Tree and painted 8 of them, although I only ended up using 4, so you're only going to need 4, in the Waverly chalk paint in white. Now, I figured out after doing the first one that you really only have to paint the sides of one, so where you're holding it with your thumb and your finger, you don't have to paint 2 of the sides. You just have to paint 4 squares going around, if that makes sense. After my boards were dry, I went ahead and lined them up pink, white, pink, white. Then, after I made sure that they were all lined up, I took this super glue that I got from the Dollar Tree that I've been seeing a lot of crafters use instead of E6000, so I decided to try it. And I did a super glue, hot glue combination, super glue for the permanent hold, hot glue for the immediate hold, and I did this on each of my boards to put them all together. Next, I went ahead and scraped off and cleaned off any of the glue that might have bled through. Now, if you know me, you know I can't just leave this pure white and pink like this, so I had to distress it. So I took that Waverly antique wax and a makeup sponge this time, and I dipped, dabbed, and then brushed my makeup sponge all over my boards to give it that antique and worn look. Then I turned the makeup sponge on the pointy side and I dipped it into the antique wax and traced down the lines of my boards to make it look like shiplap. Now, as you can see, I'm also rubbing it in with my finger. After I had it all painted and distressed how I liked it, I took my sanding block to it to blend all my colors in. I love the coloring on this. I just love how that came out. I did go over some of the spots with the Waverly antique wax and the chalk paint to get the look that I desired. Once I was done with all of that, I took this nautical rope in white that I got from the Dollar Tree and I cut off a little piece and then I hot glued them to either sides of the board. If you haven't figured it out, we're making a tray. Now, here's the one tip I would give you. Before gluing the first piece down, I would take that and measure out a second piece. I forgot to do that, so I kind of had to eyeball it, and one handle is a little bit bigger than the other handle. So take it from me and measure your second one out first. Now, originally when I started gluing this down, I was kind of looking at those frayed edges. I was like, uh-oh, what am I going to do with that? But then as I kept looking at it, I kind of liked it. So I went ahead and spread the little edges out and hot glued them down. I kind of feel like this made this look a little bit shabby chic, and I love that look too. Now I did hold all the edges down for a little bit just to make sure that they were on. And you can use E6000 or that super glue too to permanently have it. But as you can see, it's very durable. After that was done, I flipped my boards over and I hot glued one of my blocks in each corner. Now, of course, you could do this before you do the handles. Mine just weren't dry yet, so I opted to do it after, and it turned out fine. But I just put a ton of hot glue on one block and put one block in each corner, and this completed this tray. I did take my Waverly Antique wax and I touched up some of the edges and also rubbed it on the blocks because I wanted it all to blend in. After all my touch-ups were done, I was left with this shabby chic / rustic / springy tray, and I absolutely love how this came out. This actually could be great for Valentine's Day too, once you think about it, but how cute is this? And it was so easy to make as well. I can't wait to style it in my spring decor. What do you think? Now for my next DIY, it didn't come out exactly how I wanted, but I still think it came out cute. And this was inspired by something that I saw on Pinterest, which I believe originally came from the Wayfair website. So I started off with this amazing mason jar sign that, of course, I got from Dollar General, and I took some Waverly chalk paint in white and gave it a few coats of that on the top. Now I was careful not to get any paint on the metal on top. Then after my white paint was dry, I went ahead and took that Waverly antique wax and I brushed that over my white paint. Now I obviously was not going for full coverage here, but I wanted the majority of it to be covered. Then I went ahead and made sure that it was dry. Next, I took some of this petroleum jelly and I spread it all over my mason jar. I made sure to get every corner and also made sure that this was completely covered as well. Then I took that Waverly chalk paint in white again and I brushed it over the petroleum jelly. Then by using my hairdryer, I dried my mason jar, and then it was time for the magic. I took this little scraper and I scraped it down, and I did wipe off the petroleum jelly and paint after every scrape, but look at this. It created this chipped wood look, and I am obsessed with this look. It is so rustic and so neat, and how easy was that to do? Then I kind of decided that it took a little bit too much of the white off, so I just brushed a little bit back on there, and it was perfect. I loved it. And that credit goes to Windy City Crafts. That's where I got that idea, so thank you for that. Next, by using black acrylic paint and a really small brush, I just went around the perimeter of my mason jar. I started from the top, went down and around, and back up to the other end of the top. Then I went around the edges of the mason jar as well. Next, I took the sheet of rub-on transfers that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I started cutting out these little leafy decals. And I kind of was just playing with this. I wanted to build up a very pretty leafy display, I guess, on one side of my mason jar. But first, before I put anything down, I decided that the black around was just a little too bold, so I hit it with my sanding block. Then I went ahead and went back to those rub-on transfers, and I just, like I said, played with it until I got the look I was going for. After I pretty much knew how I was going to lay them all out, I went ahead and peeled off the back of my decals, and then I cut more out to kind of build it up. Then by using a craft stick, I rubbed them on. Fun fact, this was a fail. It did not work. For some reason, my rub-on transfers did not like the paint underneath. So I went ahead and put some Mod Podge on my paint because I thought that maybe the rub-on transfers would adhere to those. Fun fact again, that didn't work either. So I had 2 fails. And I think it was because my Mod Podge was not completely dry. So if you do this, it would work, but you need to Mod Podge over all the paint on your mason jar, let it sit for like an hour, and then do the rub-on transfers, and then I think it would work out a lot better. So here's where I'm like, oh no, now what do I do? So what I ended up doing was I took my decals off and cut them down as close to the leaf part as possible, and then I just went ahead and put them back on. Now, you can't really see the little transfer paper on there from far away, and really not when you're up close either, so this actually ended up working out. Once I had my vines down how I liked it, I took that pink parfait apple barrel paint again and then mixed it with some white Waverly chalk paint to make that pale pink. Now, I will tell you, skip this step too, because the pale pink did not show up. This project has had a lot of roadblocks in it, but in the end, I think it turned out okay. So then I took the back of a paintbrush and I just put dots all around, and see how they're coming out white? That really is pale pink, you just can't tell. So then I decided just to use the regular pink parfait paint and go over it. And now I kind of made like a little rose bush here, I guess. I don't really know. I don't really know what I was going for. I just wanted a really cute spring plant or vine. After I had my plant how I liked it, I went ahead and dried it with my blow dryer and then put a nice thin coat of Mod Podge over the whole mason jar to protect my paint. Next, I took this pack of chalkboard tags that I got from the Dollar Tree, and this one that it came in was just a little too big, so I decided just to cut it down a little bit. So I angled at the top and then cut it down and made it a little bit smaller. Next, I took some twine and I wrapped the top of my mason jar, but at the bottom of where the lid would be with that. Then I cut it off in the front and I tied a knot to the side of my lid. Next, I took my white paint marker and I outlined the perimeter of my tag. Then I wrote the word bloom in cursive writing, little fancy, right in the middle. Next, I took my twine and threaded it through the hole in my tag and I tied a knot going down. That way it hung to the side of my mason jar right by the vines. Then originally I had tied a bow, decided I didn't like it because I wanted my little tag to be a little lower on my mason jar. So I pulled the tag down where I wanted it and I ended up hot gluing it down. That way it wouldn't move and then I can just work with the twine after. So after I untied my bow, I just took those ends and wrapped them around the back and hot glued them down. Then I did end up making a little twine bow again and hot glued it to the side where all the twine met in the front. Now, even though this project gave me a lot of challenges along the way, I think it still came out pretty cool. And it's very unique, and I absolutely love that chipped wood look and that technique, and I think I'm going to use it a lot because it's just one of my favorite looks. But what do you think? This last DIY is so simple and it took me minutes to create. So I took this oval sign that I got from Dollar General and it has letters on it for initials. So obviously we need to cover that up, but I loved everything else about that sign. Now the lighter wood around, I just wanted to darken up, so I took some Waverly Antique Wax, brushed it around there, then by using a baby wipe, I wiped it off to create a faux stain. I did this around the entire oval. Now when I was doing this, I was careful to not get any of this wax on the white inner part of this sign. Next, I took my sanding block and lightly sanded the edges to bring out the natural wood and to blend my Waverly wax. Then I took this pack of little bunnies that I got from the Dollar Tree and this piece of scrapbook paper that has script on it, and I turned it over and traced the bunny and then cut it out. Then by using my Mod Podge again, I glued the scrapbook paper on top of my bunny. Now to give it that nice clean edge, I took my sanding block and sanded in the down direction on every edge. Then for those little crevices that are hard to get into, I took a regular nail file, and that really helped get into those little sections. Next, you know me, I took my Waverly Antique Wax and I'm going to distress this little bunny. So I carefully brushed over all of the edges and then lightly brushed in the middle, lightly. I did not really want to take away from this script on this paper, but I just lightly brushed around in the middle and then around the edges. Then I sanded it off to bring out the natural wood and to blend all my wax. Next, I grabbed our sign and I positioned it in the middle. Now it does go at an angle. It's not going to be straight up and down, but it's going to be glued at an angle, and I added some hot glue and glued it down over the eye. Then I took some twine and made a little simple bow and then hot glued it right where a necktie would be. And that's it. That completed this little sign. I loved this because it was so simple. Like I said, it took me minutes to create. It was inexpensive, but we really took a piece that was kind of and we made it into this amazing spring Easter decor, perfect for a tiered tray. What do you think? I absolutely love how all of these came out. I love how they're so springy, so they have that little color in there, but they're also rustic, so it would actually fit the decor in my home. You're gonna have to let me know in the comments which one of these was your favorite. I have to say, I think my favorite was the tray. I just have a love for tiered trays and trays because I love styling them. So that one was definitely my favorite, but that little bunny sign at the end is a close second. But you're gonna have to let me know which one was your favorite. I want to thank you so much for watching my tutorial today, and I hope you got a lot of great ideas and inspired to make your own. If you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, then hit that notification bell so you can be notified whenever I upload a new video. And if you would be so kind, give this video a thumbs up because it really helps my channel to grow. Then hop on over to Facebook and Instagram and follow me there so we can craft together. Sometimes I do live crafting on Facebook and they are really fun. So until we craft again, I'll see you soon. Bye!